Hey, welcome back to our shop just outside of Kennesaw here in northern Georgia. Working on a Nichols and Stone chair. It's a rocking chair. I met a very nice lady this weekend. She had started to refinish it, ran into some problems, asked me if I would pick it up for her, which I did. I stripped it yesterday, I sanded it this morning, and now we're moving on to repairs, and that's what you'll see next. And if you take a look here, you can see I put a razor blade in here. This is completely split through. I think this had been repaired once before and it let go again. So we've got to get some adhesive in there and get that clamped up. Then the second repair are to the arms, which have both come loose, as you can see as I'm wiggling it. They both come loose at the front. I believe the second spindle may still be fairly tight, but these are going to have to come off, and to get these off, we'll just pop these caps off. There should be a screw that we can unscrew, and then we'll use a little heat and get these off, clean out these holes, and re-glue these. And then finally, if you look at the seat, you can see we've got some real big chips and dings and gouges that need to be redone. Okay, let's see if we can get some glue worked into this crack. I got you set up on the other side, so hopefully you can see. And it's making it real difficult for me to get in here. Just using regular carpenter's glue. Working in as much as we can into this crack. Okay, I'm going to wipe off the excess with some water and a towel. I know there's different opinions on whether you should wipe it off or leave it to dry. I'm a wipe it off guy. I don't like the mess. I know it might seal the wood a little bit, but I'll get some sandpaper and open it back up if that's the case. Okay, I think we're ready for clamps. Got a real good glue squeeze out. That's a good sign. We have plenty of glue in that joint. The joint's coming together nice and tight. And up here it looks like it's laying nice and flat. Okay, I'm happy with it. When the glue sets up, give it a light sanding, and if we have any cracks to fill, we'll fill it with wax. But that looks real good. It looks real good. Let's move on to the arms. Okay, time to get this plug out. There's a number of ways you can do this. You can take a chisel and twist or pop. But the way that seems to work well for me, especially when they're glued in like this one, is just take a screw and run it right in there. And normally, well, listen, lots of times when you go to take one of these off, there's a screw right behind that screw head. So if you run a screw in there, it acts almost like a gear puller, and it'll pop this right off. This has gone in the full depth of this screw already and hasn't hit anything. Now I suppose the screw could be farther in, but let's just take a look. We're going to pop this off with a chisel and take a look and see what we're dealing with, because there's definitely a fastener holding that arm on, and we definitely need to get it out of there. Well, there comes the plug, and it's no different than we expected. But I'm thinking that the screw may be set way back. Oh yeah, the screw's way in. I can see it now. Okay, can you see in there? That screw sets way back in there. Let me get a light. Yeah, just a big old Phillips head. Let's get that out of there. Okay, there we go. That's what's helping to hold the arm on. Okay, I was able to pop that plug out, doing the same thing. I ran a screw in there and just pulled it out. And now we're going to see if we can get this arm assembly off without using any heat. And as you know, I kind of just grab it, and then as I make a fist, my hand kind of acts like a wedge, and here it comes. Alrighty there. And here we go. That's the right arm assembly. And it certainly is the right thing to do, to take the time to make sure those arms are on there nice and tight. Okay, I'm going to turn you off and get the other one off. If I can't get it off with my hand, I'm just going to heat it up with the heat gun. You see me do that 1,000 times. Same deal, I'll just squeeze it and work it up. Well, I'll tell you what, I've been a half hour at least on this one joint with heat and reverse clamps and fists, and here it comes. Holy cow, was that in there. Man. Alright, let me bring you up to snuff on what's occurred so far. I had a heck of a time getting that left side arm off, and the left side middle piece is securely glued in there. I'm going to leave him be. He came loose at the top. To work on the rocker, I used some wood screw clamps on either side, clamping it to the bench so it was relatively stable. And then a lot of heat and a lot of muscle, and a lot of heat and a lot of muscle, and it finally came off. It took about a half hour to get the left side off. There were remnants of glue where the arm is screwed into the upright, so I'll put some glue there. That glue is long since gone. There was a pink adhesive, probably an epoxy, that was used. So what I'm going to do now is just set you up, and I'll start gluing this all up, and we'll get her back together, and that'll be it for the repairs for today. So make sure you can see what we're doing. We've got the arms back installed, the screws are back screwed in, the glue squeeze out has been cleaned up. Whatever little bit comes out afterwards, you can see it's still oozing out. We'll clean up tomorrow. And we've got a clamp down. You know, this is the kind of repair that maybe sometimes you don't expect when you start a job, but you know, this is going to be a gift to her daughter, and someday her daughter may have children, and when they're rocking the grandbabies in this, they don't want those arms loose. And it, you know, it was an extra hour or hour and a half's worth of work for us, but you know what, it had to be done, because it doesn't leave this shop if it's not right. Alrighty, we're going to let this all sit up, and I'm going to take some epoxy putty and fill in these holes, and I'm going to knock off for the day. These are just dings that need to be filled in. You don't need to watch that. That's not really that exciting. You can see that repair is drying. These are drying. I'll get the epoxy on these dings in the seat, and we'll come in tomorrow and we'll stain this and we'll start working on it. So we're making progress. We'll see you tomorrow. Let's get these clamps off and see how we did. Well, if you remember, these arms were loose when we started, and they are rock solid now. So that repair is done. Okay, I want to do a little bit of touch-up sanding. I did a little bit of filling here last night before I turned in, and as you can see here, I got a little bit of fill that needs to be sanded out. And then I want to take these clamps off this repair here and see if it needs to be sanded. And I will bring you back when it's time to put some color on this chair. And that's our spindle that we repaired yesterday. And you can't even tell that was broken, and that was broken clean through. So I'm real happy with that repair. Okay, our piece has been stripped. It's been sanded. It's been repaired. And now it's time to start thinking about how we're going to finish this. This piece was apparently dyed at the factory as its first coat of finish. Lots of times finish is applied over top of the clear wood using toners and lacquers. In this case, something was applied directly to the wood to darken it to a black before the finish was put on. If I remember correctly, this had kind of like you know, the gold stripes and the flowers across the top. That it's supposed to look like a colonial painted piece. There is absolutely no way that I will ever get all this color out of this wood. I'm certainly not going to bleach it. It's not in the owner's budget, and I have no interest in doing that. So what we decided to do was to stain it and then let these darker spots that are in the wood already kind of act like a highlight under the stain. And I think that's going to look really good. So the next question, and again, I share this with you only so you understand my thought process. This may not be right, but when you do your own project, you make your own decisions. This is pine, and as we know, pine absorbs stain in a very blotchy way. So I have to balance the penetration of the stain I'm going to put on and how it's going to blend in with the existing dye versus do I want to have the stain run the risk of blotching on the pine. I mean, this piece of pine here in the seat's it's got to be 2.5 inches thick, and it's been sanded to death. I mean, I really put a lot of effort into sanding this, and I think that's going to blotch. I know that the turnings are probably not going to blotch badly, and I'll tell you why in just a second. And the rocker, I'm assuming, is probably not pine because they would make that out of a harder wood. And then we only have to worry about the back splats here, or the back spindles, and the back splat, which is this piece across the top, to see how that's going to take the stain. Let me show you what I did to test this, and also allow the let me show you what I did to test this, and also allow the owner to make a decision on what color she wanted. Yesterday, I applied some wiping stain and then some lacquer to this turning right here, and this is medium brown walnut, and this is a designer stain called cinnamon. She chose the medium brown walnut, but what's important for the decision that we're about to make is how that medium brown walnut was absorbed by the wood and blended in with spots like this. I mean, before we stained it, it looked very much like this, and now it looks like this, and it has just these different highlights which are going to look wonderful on a piece that we're going to try to give it a little bit of an antique look to. So I think we're going to be in really good shape. The only issue that I'm concerned about right now is the seat. So what I've decided to do is, rather than seal this completely with a lacquer sealer and run the risk of not having the stain penetrate deep enough to do what I want, I'm going to put a spit coat of shellac on it. A spit coat of shellac is about 4, sometimes 5 parts of denatured alcohol to 1 part of shellac. It's a very thin coat, and what happens is you put it on, the alcohol gets sucked right into the wood, and then it evaporates off and the shellac is left behind, which is absorbed more into the softer parts of the pine and less into the harder parts of the pine, and it evens out the absorption of the piece of pine that you apply it to, so that when you lay your wiping stain on it, it's absorbed more easily. I'm going to do the seat. I haven't decided if I'm going to do the back spindles or the back splat. I think I may test those first with a little bit of stain to see how it takes, but you can see how dark those back splats are, and I really want the stain to penetrate there to even those out the best I can. So it's kind of an unusual situation. Normally we're working more with a more virgin wood. There's a lot of color that remains in this wood, and it's just not coming out. I mean, particularly in this end grain here, it just soaks it right in. So this is what we're dealing with. This is the thought process I used. This is the decision I made, and we'll see how it goes. So next step is going to be the spit coat. And this is a clean Pyrex measuring cup. Not so clean on the outside, but clean on the inside. I've got an ounce of seal coat, which is a de-waxed shellac in there. So if I add 4 parts of alcohol, it should bring it up to 5 ounces, or about 2/3 of a cup. So here we go. Alright, there's our spit coat. As you can see, it's very, very dilute. That's the purpose of it. I'll put it on with a foam brush, let it soak in, and let it dry. Okay, I got you held here in one hand just to show you how this applies. But just like so. Alright, let me turn you off and get this on, and let's see how we do. The spit coat is on, and it was absorbed very evenly by the piece. Now, very often when you strip a piece and you lacquer wash it and water wash it, the very residual bits of finish actually sort of act like a sealer in themselves. Plus, this may have been sealed at the factory, although I doubt it because the dye was applied right to the wood. But regardless, I think we're going to be okay now. What we'll do is when we start to apply the stain, we'll do it very judiciously and see how we're making out. If things go south, we'll change our application process. But I'm not going to put any seal coat on any of the rest of the chair, and we're going to flip this over and start applying some color. I'm using Mohawk's medium brown walnut wiping stain. That's what the owner has chosen, and we'll get started applying that now. See, I've got the chair flipped upside down on the bench. I've got it clamped down so it doesn't fall. Hey, I almost forgot about these button plugs that we took off to get the arms off. So what I just do is put just a touch of glue in here, and I've got some 1/2-inch birch plugs that'll go right in. Alright, let me turn you off and keep going here. Alrighty, medium brown walnut, foam brush. We'll start on the underside of the seat, see how it comes out. But there we are, a nice chocolate brown, which is exactly what she was looking for. Okay, let me turn you off and I will get the rest of the underside of this done. And there we've got the rocker assembly and the stretchers with their first coat of wiping stain on them. And you can see the differential manner in which the stain was absorbed. I think in places it looks wonderful. If there's any places that are a little bit light that we don't like, once we get everything finished, like right there, it looks all tigered. I think that's gorgeous. Look at that, that's beautiful. I like that up there too. We've always got glazes and other things that we can do. But I think we're going to be fine. So I'm going to flip this over and start on the top side. We've got the first coat of wiping stain on, and it went on very, very well. Where we put a spit coat on the seat, you can see we don't have any blotching whatsoever. Those dark colors are the existing or the pre-existing dye stain that was in there. That's going to be part of our finish. You can see the back spindles came out beautifully. The back splat came out beautifully. We've got a couple of light spots here, a couple of light spots on the turnings, but these are all things that we'll touch up with glaze and color. Like for example here, this turning, this section from here to here didn't take the stain as well as the other one did. And once we get this sealed up and we get a better idea what it's going to look like with a finish on it, we can decide what we want to color out, touch out, and what we want to leave for character. But I'm very happy with the way it's come out so far. It looks exactly like what we wanted it to look like. And it's a rainy day here in Georgia, so it'll give us a couple hours to dry. This Mohawk stain normally dries in an hour, but it's pouring rain out. So we'll give it a couple, maybe until after lunch. And then we'll come out here and take a look at it, touch up sand what needs to be sanded, and then get her sealed up and start thinking about how we're going to touch up color, whatever needs to be touched up. But so far, so good. We'll bring you back. I gave it about 3 hours for the stain to dry, which is probably 2 hours longer than I needed to. In the interim, the front passed through, the rain stopped, and the temperatures dropped about 15 degrees. So we're ready to shoot a coat of sealer on this. So here we go. If I can find my mask. And there's the top of the back splat, the back of the rear spindles, and the back of the seat with one coat of sealer. And notice I did a little color work on that birch plug we put in there, so that matches now. And then here's the arm. There's the seat. Okay, I used 320 gold sandpaper as well as one of these flexible 320 grit sponges to get the turnings. And remember, after the first coat of sealer, what we're trying to do is smooth this finish out so it's nice to the touch. We're going to build a nice flat surface. Any torn wood fibers were held up by that first coat of sealer, and our job was to get them sanded off. When we first started sanding, this seat was rough, and now it's nice and smooth, and that's what you want to do. She's all sanded and dusted off, ready for a second coat of sealer. Hey, one of the things that I've learned is that if you take a microfiber cloth and wipe it across the surface of your project, as long as the microfiber cloth is gliding across there, you've got a good enough surface. If it starts to grab, you know you got more work to do. I'm going to go to the underside of the chair, of the seat, which is obviously just sealed, it's not going to be finished, and you can see how that just grabs there because that hasn't been sanded. Where here, it's nice and smooth. All right, second coat. Our second coat of sealer is on. Once I get it sanded off and cleaned off, we'll mix up a little bit of toner and decide where we want to lay some toner. We may just give a light mist coat to the entire piece and just start to build up some depth of color. It's difficult with the garage door open. Let me pull this door shut. And swing you around to the front. But I think I would like a little more depth of color on these vertical back pieces. I think our back splat's fine, but these vertical stretchers, I think just need a little bit of color. You can see there's quite a little bit of depth here already with just 2 coats of sealer. These are looking just a little flat, so I think I want to put a little color on those to brighten those up a little bit. The seat looks great. The edge of the seat looks great. The rocker assemblies and the bottom stretchers all look great, so this is really coming out just as we'd hoped, and I think she's going to be real happy with it. Okay, so when I bring you back, I will have sanded off the second coat of sealer, or sanded down the second coat of sealer, and we'll be ready to shoot a little color on here. Okay, we're all sanded, sealed, sanded, sealed, sanded. I'm ready for color. I've mixed up some medium brown walnut dye stain, some lacquer thinner, and a little bit of pre-cat lacquer, and that's what I'll be shooting on to the chair. Okay, the changes are going to be very subtle, but it's mostly just an issue of evening out the very light and very dark spots, and also giving a little depth of color. So it's another layer of color. Now, for example, you see we're light here. That's fine. That's going to look part of the antique look. We're light here and we're light where the elbow would rest. I'm happy with that. But I wasn't happy with being light on those vertical stretchers. And you can see we've got those toned in a whole lot nicer now. So color wise, might just darken this up right here just a little bit, but right now I think it's looking really good, and we're getting ready to shoot our first coat of lacquer on it. Okay, let me play around a little bit, and I will bring you back when it's time to shoot the lacquer coat on. Let's shoot some lacquer. Off camera, I had flipped the piece over and shot the underside of it. I think it looks pretty good. What do you think? Okay, I'm going to let this lacquer coat harden up. I'll buff it out with some 4/0 steel wool, and we'll shoot the second coat of lacquer. And that probably will be it for today, and I'll put additional lacquer coats on it tomorrow. Okay, while you were gone, I let the first coat of lacquer dry, and then I buffed the whole chair out with 4/0 steel wool. Blew it off, wiped it down, and shot it with a second coat of pre-cat lacquer, and I think it is looking spectacular. So I'm going to let this lacquer flash off here, and then I will bring this piece inside, and we will commence with additional coats tomorrow. I had initially considered using glaze to highlight this piece, and if it needed any color highlights, But frankly, there is just so much going on with this finish as far as colors and tones and patterns that I just don't think it's necessary. And frankly, I think it just looks great. So listen, that's it for today. This has been a good day, and the chair is looking great. So we'll come back tomorrow, put the last couple of coats on, and wrap this project up. Good morning, we're back in the shop. The only plans for the chair today is to shoot a couple more coats of lacquer on it, and obviously rubbing it down between coats, and then she'll be done. There's really no sense for me just to continue to show me shooting lacquer on this chair, so I'll just bring you back when the project's over for a final shot. But I did want to give you, share with you a little tip. When you shoot a lacquer coat, no matter how careful you are, sometimes it's a little bit rough when you're finished, and there's a number of ways you can deal with that. You can let it harden up for several days, and then using wax or wool lube and 4/0 steel wool gently go over it. But another method is to use craft paper, like this lunch bag, and just, believe it or not, rub the craft paper over the lacquer, and it flattens it right out. And if you don't have a lunch bag, what I tend to do more often is just take a piece of used sandpaper and use the back, not the gritty part, the back, the paper part of the sandpaper, and just rub it out. And what'll happen is you'll get a nice smooth surface. And this is a good technique for using for things like seats and hand rests and arms, where people are going to be running their hands over it to judge the quality of the finish. And you can tell the difference in how smooth. This is silk smooth now, and this has just a little bit of roughness, like right in here between these spindles is a little bit rough. If I get that paper in there and just buff that out, that becomes a whole lot smoother. All right, just a tip for you. Hey, one other thing to keep in mind when you're shooting a piece of furniture is position it so that you can get a good spray pattern on all the pieces that you need to refinish. For example, like the undersides of these leg stretchers, if I didn't flip this upside down, we would never get a nice coat of finish on that. And then the other thing, don't think I showed you, it's upside down, but there's the Nichols and Stone emblem on the underside of the seat. But you can see that we've focused our efforts on getting just as good a finish on the parts of the chair that aren't going to show as we have on the parts that will show. And as soon as this hardens up, we'll flip it over and shoot the top. One other tip, we all like to work on stuff that's at eye level because it makes it a whole lot more comfortable for us to deal with it. But if you are finishing a piece, you want to make sure that you put it down at the level that it's going to be seen at, to make sure that you haven't missed anything. And that's what we've done here when we shot this final coat. Put it right down on the floor. Well, listen, this was a great project. I hope you learned something. I appreciate you watching. I'm real proud of the way this came out, and hopefully she'll like it. So listen, from our shop just outside of Kennesaw here in North Georgia, best regards. Thanks for watching. Y'all take good care. We'll see you next video. Bye.